So I'm
Good.
going to go ahead and present my screen. So this meeting is called Think Big, and we're going to be thinking big about release management as an offering for GitLab. And a couple of different thoughts on this. Actually, I like that view better. Okay. Think Big is intended for us to brainstorm as a technical design and product team about our vision, roadmap, and all the components that go into creating a positive experience for our GitLab customers. We're going to focus on the release management solution, obviously. I want to make sure that we're aligned on our medium to long-term goals for this group. And hopefully we can have a really strong understanding of what we want the direction of our offering to be. So it's hard because of how quickly our industry moves. And it's also sometimes a challenge for us to have like a true north when there's other partners and other competitors moving faster in certain areas or the other. But what we can do on the product and design side is try to provide the best benchmark that we can to help move our product toward and hopefully capture the market that we're going after. Does that make sense? Okay, so then in this meeting, we hopefully will have this on a bi-weekly cadence where we'll revisit our future vision of release management and look at our planned epics so that we can back into the timing of those issues. They can be from, do we need to do user research? Do we need to do some customer interviews? Do we need to do a whole opportunity canvas? Or is this more of like a technical research spike that we need to investigate how this looks on the technical front end or back end and then pull in the corresponding people accordingly? I also want this to be a frank and honest opportunity for us to either push back on the vision or question the vision. I'm by no means the only expert here. I feel all of us bring different perspectives to the table and are all equally valid. So we should feel comfortable as a team confronting those assumptions that we've baked into issues, or if something isn't clear, raising your hand and being like, this has to be clear. Okay? Perfect. So we'll talk later about how frequently and what day of the week works. We'll probably set our next meeting maybe after the break, since looking across calendars, all of us are kind of missing each other. So our next one will probably be that second week of January, which will hopefully be a nice timing before we start the following milestone and all that stuff. So in this meeting, I wanted just to talk through some of the epics that we have planned, meaning we created them. Most of the issues are either in validation or in the backlog of those epics, and they are very relevant for our vision. I split it by UX. So since we just have Hyana here, we'll probably just talk through these top 5 as a high level overview. I also want to talk through some of the hypotheses and vision, maybe mission, and we can talk about some ideas that might be good guiding blocks for us to start tackling as a Think Big session. How does that sound?
Good.
Okay. Is there anything else that you would want to get out of this kind of meeting?
Yeah, you mentioned in the beginning, there's also a note here about us identifying opportunities for user research. So just a heads up, in the next few calls, we can add Lori to the loop so that she can also participate and help us with framing those research initiatives.
I can do that. So I think it might make sense to start with our hypothesis and vision mission, and then we can talk about how that trues up with the epics that are kind of tied back to the vision and direction page. Would that make sense? Okay. So when I look at the GitLab install base, very few of them are leveraging the release functionality. Most of them are source code management customers across various tiers, across various offerings. But we can say that all GitLab users would have a better experience within GitLab if they manage their deployments in our offering. So this suggests that release can be a compelling and motivating solution for our customers. So the vision that would help motivate that would be having GitLab releases be the place to manage multi-cloud deployments across all aspects of GitLab, which would be projects, groups, and environments. When we look at all of those various aspects of GitLab, this means we have to think of the customer and user's experience as they navigate through those three different places. And if they're orchestrating releases across those different kinds of things, where do they go to see how releases are happening in all of the projects that they manage or they're a part of, or all the groups that they belong to? So from a mission, very tactical, like what do we want to accomplish and drive to? When I look at that piece of the pie of the GitLab users that are only using source code management, I want to start seeing them use releases by 2021. I would like to get half of those people who are only SCM leveraging our release functionality. This means going back up to our epics here. These features, these collections of features, are going to contribute to moving people off of just their source code management. We need to be able to do a couple of things in the existing functionality of release in the UI, not just the API. We also need to be able to do all the things that we can do in the API in the UI, which is exactly the epic that you created, Nathan. Thank you. And then we also need to support some of the governance functionality in order to tap into the regulated industry. And I put a little graph here, and it links out to a report on our market. And I have some notes in here, so if you guys are curious, you can dive in, but I just wanted to show you, looking at our entire opportunity, our white space, about a quarter of it is nested across 10 different industries. That's, yeah, we have like 100 industries, and 10 of those comprise 25% of our opportunity. The way that we're going to activate that opportunity is by delivering on very focused features that activate release governance and the ability to see across projects, groups, and environments, especially if they're in different cloud deployments.
Hey, Jackie, it's a quick question.
Go for it.
So everything you're saying makes a lot of sense. For the SCM, the folks that are only using GitLab for SCM, our SCM offering,
Mm-hmm.
do we have any insight into what they're using and why? Like, any hurdles we would need to overcome? Like, is it because, I'm not sure how to word this. Are they using our competitors? Are they using, some sort of like on-prem?
Oh, shit, sorry. Go ahead, keep going.
What happened?
On,
I didn't even see. Oh, no problem. Do we have any insight into why they're not using GitLab and what we could do to help change that? Like, is it just our maturity level, our lovability level in certain areas? Is it, they're already ingrained with other, competitors, things like that?
Yeah, so I have 5 calls scheduled this week and a couple of calls scheduled next week with old friends of mine that I know that leverage GitLab at their companies.
Okay.
All of them are casual users of GitLab. None of them are official contracted. They're all leveraging our core offering.
Yeah.
And the general theme that I'm hearing is, yeah, you know, I used it as a startup about 5 years ago because it was the cheap open source option on the market.
Yep.
And I love it as that kind of solution. And now that you're offering all these other things, it's hard for me to jump over when I'm so ingrained with my current provider of X, Y, and Z. That X, Y, and Z is what I really need to dig into. So if people are used to managing their workflow in Jenkins and Travis or Zevia Labs from a release orchestration perspective, it gets really hard to put our offering in there where you have to only manage everything in the API.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair. It makes total sense. Just curious. Thanks.
But generally, I would say probably about 70% are what our capabilities actually are as limiting. And then the remainder are competitors or just status quo. It's hard to uproot things that people are comfortable with. Okay. Good question there, though. So my immediate priority right now is to start validating these hypotheses and mission vision with customers. And my goal would be in our next meeting for Think Big to start presenting some of those findings. But I'm also wanting to hear, are there other things that aren't captured in these kinds of epics, or even that are on your mind as you hear these goals that I'm setting up for us to start executing against?
One idea that I had is, I know we're kind of in our own silo at the moment, but there's a lot of room, I think, to integrate with some of the other stages. And the one I am thinking of now is package. For example, if we have a release that might have an NPM package associated with it, it might be a nice way to tie a release of an NPM package to our actual NPM package offering. So there might be some ways to tie things together there.
That's a super good thought. We actually have a couple of issues as a research spike to support binary assets leveraging a generic package registry, which would allow us to then upload packages back and forth to the release object.
Nice.
And that is on the package side. So I'll drop this epic in here because I would love to hear from, your thoughts on that as you're looking from a front end perspective when Sean uncovers what the back end would look like there.
That's awesome. The other thing, you kind of already have this, but I think if we want to be able to get to that 50% level of people using release, we have a story somewhere about being able to create releases through the GitLab.ci YAML file. I think that's really important because at the moment it's kind of a pain to make releases. You have to hit the API and it's not super easy. So I think we need to make it super easy to make releases, and that will help adoption quite a bit.
Yeah,
I like that. I agree with you on that.
We're kind of in the midst of working on that right now, Nathan, also, which is great.
Barely.
It feels like it's like
soft in the midst. Yeah. In the midst may have been overly optimistic.
I like it. It keeps me from feeling really down in the dumps. When I get off calls that are I don't know where we're going, I feel lost. And yeah, definitely. That one's a hard one to solve for sure. But making it easy, it should be the priority and focus. I agree with that. Hayana, in your baseline experience of creating a release, do you think there were things that we're not thinking of about releases and release management that are super far down the road? Like, for example, how would we consider building the release experience if we're building it for somebody that only works across groups?
Yeah,
that's right now, that's a huge limitation.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think in the experience baseline, we did really work with the bare minimum, which was to be able to create a release through the UI. And we didn't really focus on any specific personas, was just really on completing the task. So we didn't really dive into this, like the bigger opportunity of, you know, what this functionality could look like. And it's kind of related to the point I have about the maturity level. So I'm just gonna paste here the link to the maturity level page. But I wonder, how can we measure the maturity of our functionalities from a user experience point of view? Right now we have the category and maturity types, right? Mostly focus on the product offering, but how can we look ahead and say, okay, maybe if we move the experience from X to Z, this will, you know, increase the or improve the maturity, I don't know, move from viable to lovable because of a specific user experience. I don't have any examples right now, but I think there's a lot of small things and small improvements we can do to the overall release management process, especially in the UI, like what Nathan said, that it's correlated to other areas in the product. And we definitely need to be able to measure that from a UX point of view. So that's kind of like an open question from my end. So how do we do that? What is the baseline for, you know, a lovable user experience?
Yeah, because when I look at it from the competitor side and from the market side, we are going up against things like Jira Portfolio, and we're going up against offerings like Zebia Labs that allow people to see across this wide array in a relatively clean way. And that leads me to think that we're not nearly as interconnected upstream and downstream as we should be. But I also feel like we're kind of biased to this developer-centric view and very focused on supporting like AWS Kubernetes bias. And as a result, we have to provide the sexiest, most technical offering out the door, and then think of the more UI components secondhand. At least that's what I've seen across the entire stack, is that we prioritize that dev-centric view, and release management might be our opportunity to go against that grain, but it's very unnatural for our current users. We're going after a market that we don't really speak to very often. And that can be a challenge, but I feel like it's where release management's at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would love for us to experiment a bit more there and then really look into, you know, how can we make the UX a bit more seamless, right? For release management, we have to connect the dots and also connect where those things live, especially where those things live in the product. See, you know, talk about the workflow and talk about, like what you say, understanding these personas and their jobs and seeing what makes sense for them, not only from a technical point of view, like not only through the APIs, but also the UI. So that's definitely the challenge from a UX point of view.
Any other thoughts on ideas or top of mind changes that we would want to make? Okay, so I've outlined in my head the goals that I've kind of been kicking around with Orit, with Jason, with the direction page. Hyana, you and I spoke about several of these, and this includes like the two other slices of my stage, which includes secrets management and pages. And Nathan, you'll likely be included in those conversations, but we'll touch on release governance and orchestration, because Hyana, we talked about this before, the runbooks conversation is a governance conversation, but it's also an orchestration conversation. So that'll span both you and Mike. But the priority for release governance is to really get it to a viable state by the end of the 9th month from today. And right now it's like, it's planned, right? We need to deliver a complete story on evidence collection, and have this be a continuous evolving audit conversation with the market. Then we also need to investigate better management of our environment experience. And that can span both orchestration and governance. So we'll need to kind of think through that story a little bit better too. Blackout periods will afford us an opportunity to kind of see if there is a way to leverage the way we instrument blackout periods for also something downstream, which would be, how do we actually have run books intervene in a deployment if all the activities aren't executed in the run book? And Nathan did some like research on that linking between Jupyter runbooks and our current release page. That looks like it needs a little bit more in-depth understanding of how Jupyter Hub's activities are in their runbook and what that means from a status perspective. But it's definitely something that is meaningful to this conversation of how to orchestrate releases and how to have this representation of manual actions in an automated pipeline, which is something that is inherently against our GitLab story of automate everything. So 6 to 9 months, we need to get release governance up and out. We need to continue to support the viability of release orchestration by helping us be competitive with Xebia Labs, which is the enterprise offering. And then supporting runbooks will be a huge step for us. Any questions on that stuff? Next 13 to 18 months is much fluffier. This is all lies, really, because I have no idea if it's going to be relevant. So it's just lies. It's just, hey, what we could do. But I think that this is where our conversation of think big is more meaningful, is after we get to this next 9 months of getting us off the ground, what really will make us propel GitLab release into the future and help us get this goal of those SCM users that are currently only leveraging GitLab for source code management to deploying with GitLab.
So Jackie, what questions do we have about that particular piece that research might be able to help get you answers for? We can take it one by one if you want.
So I think some of this is in that big customer interviewing doc, that repo of questions that I created, which are like, this is ugly as sin. What are you doing?
No, it's fine. It's fine. No, I let people, you can structure your questions how you want. It's very personal. It's just like your computer desktop. If you want to have all your files up there, do it. I don't care. But as long as you're getting what you need out of that document, that's the most important thing.
So this would be like the starting questions that when I have a call with somebody that either says, hey, I'm using GitLab or a portion of it, typically I'll like weave in to understand, like, are they automated? Are they not automated? We need to kind of see on the continuum of regulated industries, how much automation are they currently supporting in their pipeline, in their environments, in their projects and groups? Are there different permissions that we have to think about? And after we get that, it's like a double click into our personas, because right now we have a lot of information about how personas are managing their day-to-day and releases or relationship to releases, but it's the task pieces that are going to influence the instrumentation of release management for their organization. We also
Right. Yeah. The personas are missing jobs to be done, proper jobs to be done.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
The release manager has them.
I saw that, but it's so weird because when I look on our personas, I don't see the release manager as one. So like it kind of like
It's still not there? I pushed
No.
the merge request and it should be there. I saw
Okay.
it.
Okay.
I don't know.
Maybe I have like, something wrong with my bookmark.
Yeah, I don't think it's merged yet, Hillary. I'm gonna have a look at that.
Is it not there, Fiona?
I don't think so.
Sarah was working with me on that one. Okay, I'll get some help on how to figure that out.
And also what I don't want to do is come in hot with a customer or a user and exclude their entire experience. Because I think that understanding their journey into release will be the key to how we improve and where we choose to improve our offering. So if the user experience is, hey, I currently manage source code today, and I'm super familiar with tags and the YAML file, well, then that's where we should be fixing our experience. Or I'm only going to be looking on the environments page, and yeah, I work across multiple projects, but I'm super focused on these environments that span multiple projects. Then we need to be able to support releases effectively across multiple environments. And maybe it's all of it, but like, how do we stage and prioritize our offerings so that we understand that their entry into release? So that's kind of my thoughts around where research might come in handy. But right now, I think that all the projects that we have open today, awesome, thank you, are kind of a thought to that. Okay, well, I know that we only have one more minute left. So welcome to our first Think Big meeting, one of very many. I hope that this was exciting for you, definitely was for me. I'll schedule our next one after the break, and hopefully we'll be able to select one of these areas to just start going down and thinking really deeply about. Hopefully I'll have some customer calls to speak of in this next meeting, and we can go from there. Sound good? All right. If you have any changes that you want to make to this meeting or any ideas that you want to drop in, feel free to add it to this agenda and we'll commit them to this process.
Awesome. Thank you for doing this, Jackie.
Yeah, anytime. It's literally my job.
Thank you, Jackie.
Bye, guys.
Bye.